The novel that I will be discussing is Clay's Quilt by Silas House. Grief is a key player in this novel because its lasting effects on the main character inform the twist that happens at the end. In the novel, Clay Sizemore, the main character, is 24 years old. At 4, his mother was shot and killed by her ex-husband, Glenn. Clay was raised on Free Creek, the family holler, by his Aunt Easter and Uncle Gabe. Free Creek is set in the fictional Crow County of eastern Kentucky. And for those of you who don't know what a holler is, it's like a road that goes between these two big mountains. And oftentimes an entire family will live on one holler, which is the case with Clay and the Sizemores. The novel follows Clay's attempt to find love, maneuver a life without his mother, and find his place in the world. Clay eventually gets married to a fiddler named Alma and shoots and kills her ex-husband Denzel in a twist that in many ways mirrors the way that his mother died. In the novel, Clay is not a character that the reader would expect to be a murderer, and his murder of Denzel subverts the expectations created by his identity and the grief over the loss of his mother and the cultural expectations of Appalachia as a region. So first, discussing the character expectations, I'm going to talk about the grief that Clay has over the death of his mother, who's named Aneth. House shows this in 3 places that I'm going to discuss in depth. First, on page 13, he says that there's always something that reminds Clay of Aneth, and that sort of shows that Aneth lives in the back of Clay's mind, and he's always thinking about her, which can be seen on page 220, which is at his wedding. He says that he felt like his mother was watching. And then on page 38, he's having a discussion with his Uncle Paul about just life in general. And he brings up his mother and asks Paul to tell stories about his mother, such as when she brought a donkey in at Christmas into the house. And so this all sort of shows that Clay really misses his mother, and she's someone that he thinks about a lot and tries to weave into the conversation so that it sort of seems like he's still there. And it's very apparent through like these quotations and several others that I won't have time to mention that Clay is hurting over the loss of his mom. And so if he's hurting that much, why would the reader expect that Clay would be a murderer himself at the end of the novel? Moving on from the character expectations, we're going to look at the cultural expectations of Appalachia as a region, specifically with religion in Appalachia. Religion is a big thing in Appalachia. That's where I'm from, so I can sort of say that firsthand. And that's also backed up by Gowan on page 27 of an article that religion is one of the most important cultural aspects of Appalachia. Clay is raised by his Aunt Easter, which House notes on page 25. And so, Easter was very, very prevalent in the Pentecostal church on Free Creek in the novel. So, even though Clay is not a very spiritual character himself, we can sort of see that, and the reader could infer that Easter would be putting some of these values down on Clay. And even though he's not specifically Christian himself, he would probably be aware of the 10 Commandments and things like that and know that murder is a sin in Christianity and that it would greatly upset his Aunt Easter, as well as it being morally and ethically wrong. And we can sort of see Easter's take on religion in an interaction with Marguerite, which is Clay's best friend Kate's mother, on page 69, where Easter refuses to speak to Marguerite after she finds out that she's atheist. And so we can sort of see how that part of Easter's personality would affect the murder of Clay, and it further adds to the reasons that Clay would not be a murderer. And then there's a little bit of foreshadowing that I briefly wanted to talk about. Gabe gives Clay a gun for his 24th birthday. And he says, a little gun like that will get a man killed. And that sort of is foreshadowing in a way that the gun is going to be very important later on in the text, and it sort of highlights that gun and makes the reader's brain be like, oh, like when I saw it, when I reread it, because I'd read this novel before, I knew that was going to be important later on. And that is on page 24. And then for the themes of the class, Alma, Clay's wife, sort of is related to the narrator of the yellow wallpaper. She is in the process of a divorce when she and Clay meet, and in her previous marriage, she was in a sort of similar relationship with her husband as the narrator of the yellow wallpaper. Her husband doesn't want her going out with her sister Evangeline, and the narrator of the yellow wallpaper wants the narrator to stay cooped up in the house, and there are some parallels there that I wanted to point out. And then this text also deals with the other group of Appalachia and Eastern Kentucky, whereas the novels like Bonito Sereno and The Yellow Wallpaper have dealt with groups that have been traditionally othered by society. We see a lot of negative Eastern Kentucky stereotypes and Appalachia stereotypes in general, and that's just another way that this text connects to the course. So thank you for listening to my presentation.